Hi, my name's Simon. I started my career as an actor, and then I went on to do theatre directing, and then I decided to become a travel agent. Why not? So I've been in travel since 2008, really. I started off by being, I need to start sharing my screen. I started off by being a worldwide, look at the multitasking here. Hide that. Is that right? Got it. Yes. Nailed it. Started off with worldwide, round the world travel, all that kind of tailor-made, and then I moved into cruise as in sales. I had absolutely no training whatsoever. So bear with me and trust me, I have been in your shoes if you're very, very new to cruise. So I started off with no knowledge apart from if somebody mentions something like Silversea, make sure you sit up and pay attention because obviously it's a high margin product and we need to really look after those kind of guests. That's not to take anything away from any of the other cruise lines at all. So, and I'm not here sponsored by a cruise line. I'm purely here off my own back. I have my own business as a sales coach and a trainer. So anyway, so I started off in cruise. Became a top seller in cruise at this company. I then moved into management to sales managing and coaching. And under my watch, effectively, our productivity went up by about 550%. So yeah, it was pretty good. I'd love to take the credit. It's not all my credit. There was an awful lot of work done on the commercial side as well. But look, here we are. I'm going to get on with it. My job today and what I really want to do is to inspire confidence in selling cruise. I'm going to talk a little bit about cruise customer DNA. I'm going to take you through the anatomy of a ship. Now, you may already know this, and if you do, well, I don't know what, I don't know if you do or either don't, but look, let's just go from the ABCs. I'm going to bust some jargon. There's a lot of jargon goes around in cruise. I'm going to talk about how you can attract new clients, how you can sell to all clients, and how you can promote cruise, specifically to cruise perfect destinations. I'm going to touch on the wave season because it is important to us. And scattered throughout will be top tips from the sales floor. I say top tips, they may not be top tips, they're my tips. Everything I say and do comes from the sales floor. So this is dealing with me as a travel agent, a tour operator, relating to my clients. First things first, I just wanted to just get this map into your head. I've just literally just pulled this off the website, off the interweb. People think about where you can cruise. You think, oh, Caribbean. You think of, oh, the Med. Look at that map. These are all places you can cruise. The only thing that's off there, that's not on there, you can just see New Zealand. But the only thing that's missing there, of course, is Antarctica. So you can pretty much cruise anywhere where there's water. A useful thing for you to pull off the World Wide Web as well would be something like this. Again, I've literally just done a cruise calendar in a search engine. See, I'm not even sponsored by Google. I've pulled off a cruise calendar. It's really useful, particularly if I hover around here at the top. Let's say Alaska. Someone comes in and talks about Alaska, and we will be going into that season in January. It's obviously a lot of people booking their summer holidays, as we all know, in our busy season. But if they want to go to Alaska in April, the likelihood is not going to happen. So this is very useful for you to just know where the peak seasons are and where the shoulder seasons are. Here we've got high season in that sort of orangey, sort of pinky color, and then the blue season. The blue is the shoulder season. And essentially, ships are going to be in these regions at any given time. They're always going to be full of food. They're going to be full of crew. They may not necessarily be full of guests at these shoulder seasons, hence good value. Good value is often in those shoulder seasons. Another thing to bear in mind about this is think about where the ship is going to go after it's been in that Alaska season. So it might go to Australia. The likelihood is in Alaska, they might go to Australia. They might go to the Caribbean. You can see that it's slightly sort of like it's balanced off against each other. And again, that's a good way of experiencing a cruise. The ship has to reposition, again, full of staff, full of food, full of entertainment, and the ship has to get there. So that can be a useful way of experiencing cruise for good value because there's often a lot of sea days. I talked about cruise customer or client DNA. From my experience, cruise clients are very loyal people. Now, they're in sort of broad brushstrokes, they're sort of loyal in three ways, one of three ways. They're either loyal to a cruise line, and you'll find that they'll be very loyal to a cruise line. That's because cruise lines often give them or will do extra benefits with their membership programs, and they'll all have a different name for the membership programs, a bit like an airline. They are often loyal to an agent, and we hope and we're aiming for them to be loyal to you. How do you get that loyalty? Particularly when you feel like you don't know very much, is to not feel like you're being tested. Okay, think of yourself in a different way with a cruise client. Think of yourself as a concierge, right? There are places in the world, you might know Australia backwards, you might know Europe backwards, you might know America, where when someone comes in, you sit there as your with your travel agent head on, and they mention that area, and you go, I've got it, I've nailed it, and you start recommending things. Cruise is slightly the reverse. It's not so much about recommending things, it's actually about asking questions and probing what they need to know. So those are the first two: loyal to a cruise line, loyal to an agent. If they've come to you and they were loyal to another agent, it might mean the other agent has done something that they're not happy with, and that means we need to collect them and hold on to them, because they will be loyal to you. The third option is going to be, or the third type is going to be the one that's loyal to themselves. These are the people that will call you on a Sunday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning and say, what's your best price on, or what's the latest deal on, or whatever it may be. They're not really bothered about the cruise line. They want to be loyal to themselves. They're quite hard to keep as clients, I often found. But if you can relate to them in that way of, if they say to you, say, have you got any deals? You say, yes, I do have a deal. Now, whether it's relevant to you is another matter. I've got a great deal on a round the world Silver Sea cruise. It's going to cost you X amount of thousands of pounds. That might not be necessarily right for them, but it might be right for somebody else. So look, always have it. There's always deals going around. There's always going to be great options and offers. I would always have, in my book, when I was selling, I'd always have like one or two a day. I'd literally just look on the websites, have a look at a P&O website, a celebrity website, have a look at a Virgin, have a look at Silver Sea, have just got, oh, that's a good deal. Log it in your head. Yes, I've got a good deal. That's when you can start having the conversation. So I'm sorry, I'm probably going a little bit more into the sales coaching kind of area, but it helps in my mind to have those three generic types of client. So I talked about questions. It's all about questions. What kind of questions do you need to ask? Right. So the first thing I would ask is have you cruised before? Have they cruised before? If so, if they have, who with, and what was their what did they think of it? Would they like to cruise with that cruise line again? Have you cruised before? Yes, no. I prefer open questions, obviously, but have you cruised before is a great way to lead into an open question. So as I say, if yes, who with, where did you go? What kind of accommodation did you have on the cruise? Now that's a leading question from me, because I need to know what their response is. So if they say, I was with P&O, and I say, what kind of accommodation did you have? They'll say, we had an inside cabin or a balcony cabin. Now that's a good way for me to do two things. Firstly, they're talking about cabins, not staterooms or suites, because if you asked a celebrity question, it would be a stateroom. So we're not getting locked into a kind of jargon thing. We're mirroring what they say. So let's say they said that with P&O, they say we have an inside cabin. To me, that's going to say they are looking for value. They're not going to be spending a great deal of time in their cabin. They're going to be out and using the facilities of the ship much more. So that's going to help me pitch where I'm going to guide them towards price points. Are they a member of the loyalty scheme? That's a good way, again, leading question of not having to remember that Silver Sea loyalty scheme is the Venetian Society, because you might just lose that in the back of your mind. Are they a member of the loyalty scheme? Yes, we remember the Venetian Society. Oh, great. How many nights have you cruised with them? If it's going to be Silver Sea, for example, because you're not to know this, but over 100 nights, they start to have discounts. So anyway, let me just downshift a little bit. So have you cruised before? Yes or no? If so, who with? If no, what kind of accommodation do you normally like to stay in? Now, they might give you 4 or 5-star hotels or whatever it may be, which is fine. I tend to not classify cruise lines in star ratings because you can get pretty much every star rating on board a specific ship. Obviously, the higher end ships don't have the lower end star ratings. You can get a suite on board a P&O or a Royal Caribbean or an MSC, for example, and they're different levels, a bit like an aircraft. You can turn right or you can turn left. So it's useful to know what kind of level of accommodation. It's also useful to know how do they like to get around normally. Another thing about cruise clients is they tend to like to be looked after. That doesn't mean mollycoddled. That means, having transfers, having group transfers from the airport to the pre-night hotel, to the transfers onto the ship, and even the shore excursions or the shore experiences that the ship offer. Cruise clients tend to like that. If you have somebody who's very independent and they like doing their own thing, we can still do that on board a ship, but you're probably going to find a little bit more resistance to them, wanting to, or we're going to have to find ways of overcoming their resistance and their reticence about a cruise. If we're looking at value, as I said, best value is often the shoulder seasons, as in before and after the high season, transatlantics. You might find that someone comes to you because they have seen an option of a cruise, and the cruise only fare without the flights is good value. When they add on the flights, if they're booking through the cruise line, they may not think that value is relevant to them. So they might come to you and they might say, can you help me with packaging it all up yourself? If you do, that means you take the ownership of the whole package holiday, as you well know, because you're doing the flights as well. Therefore, it comes under your ABTA. Another thing I would say, and I'm going to put it in now in case I forget later, as you'll see from this this conference the next few days, cruise lines and agents, cruise lines love agents. They need agents. We work really well together. And one of the ways that happens is that, and it may already have been said, I don't know, I didn't listen on the whole thing of the previous session, is that when you do get your clients on board a cruise, if they like it, encourage them to book on board. They will often get the best rates available. A lot of our cruise lines operate through, the American US dollar rates, and often they can be really, really attractive, and there will be incentives to book on board. But also your clients will have your ABTA number attached, and as soon as they book on board, you come in the next day to work, you open up your email, you get an email from the cruise line, and there's the booking on board, and there's the commission. They basically give you that commission. They don't hold it back for themselves. There's no other industry that I can think of, or no other sector within the travel industry that will actually reward you for bringing that client to that cruise line. So just bear that in mind. So there are just a few sort of questions that we can look at. Well, let me just get rid of this bar at the bottom. Talked about cruise ship anatomy. Now, some of you may know this, some of you may not, so I'm just going to launch in. I think we've got all of the cruise lines here that are sponsoring. So if there's one here that I haven't got, please forgive me from some of the cruise lines here. So we've got Scenic River, we've got on the top left, I've got obviously Celebrity, I've got Virgin in the middle, I've got Silversea here, I've got, this is the Queen Mary 2 on Cunard. Little thing about the Cunard, the Queen Mary 2, you see the lifeboats are slightly higher, and that's because it's an ocean-going liner, and they've got special dispensation for having the lifeboat slightly higher so that they don't get bashed by the waves. Just a little geeky thing. I've got loads of that, which is why my session could go on for days, but it won't. I promise you it won't. Scenic Eclipse, luxury yacht, obviously Silversea here, and P&O. So, all right, front of the ship. The front of the actual ship is called the bow. But for accommodation wise, we would call it forward. And you basically base everything on midship. So the midship is going to be here. That's useful here on Celebrity Edge. I've forgotten the name of that, forgive me. They'll tell you what that is later. But here on Celebrity Edge, that would be midships. You'd have them forward of midship, aft of midship, and then you would have port and starboard. It's very easy to get confused between port and starboard. The way I used to remember it is there is no port left in the bottle. Left, L-E-F-T, left. So port is left, starboard is right. So forward, aft, port, starboard. You'd also be talking about higher and lower. I'll get to that in a minute. Just bear with me on that one when I come back to it again. Also, bear in mind that a lot of the forward cabins or staterooms will be ocean view. So that's a view of the ocean with a window that you cannot open. You'll never be able to open an ocean view category cabin or stateroom. And that's obviously because you're going to get a lot of wind and potentially a lot of waves. The difference here is, I think, some of the cruise lines, like, for example, maybe on Silversea, and it looks like here on with the Secret Scarlet Lady, that they do actually have some suites on there as well. Anyway, so there we are. Forward, aft, port left, no port left in the bottle. Other things to do, again, not to confuse you at all, but this is what people will say. Accommodation is either a cabin or a stateroom, obviously, or a suite as well. You'll have inside, and an inside cabin will have no natural daylight at all. That will literally be an inside room. I would look to promote those for people who will not be in their room very much and they're after good value, particularly on the larger ships. An outside or an ocean view, there's a clue in the name. It's either outside or there's an ocean view, but you can never open those windows. So you'll be able to see what's outside, you get some natural daylight, but you won't be able to open those. Balcony, veranda, sea terrace, Virgin calls them sea terraces. Again, clue in the name, different types of balconies, different positions on the ship. But essentially, you'll be able to open that and have some fresh air, and you'll have your own private outside space. Very useful for doing cruise specific destinations, like cruise must destinations like Alaska or the Norwegian fields or something. And then you have the suite categories, of which there are many different levels of suite categories. Again, I've talked about forward, aft, port, starboard, and high and low. Life on board will be the terminology people talk about is the itinerary. We all know what itinerary is. The itinerary of the cruise. What's the itinerary of the cruise? Where is it going and how long for? You'll be able to see often, you know, you might see, for example, if we look at New Zealand, they'll be going into the sounds on New Zealand. They might do 3 of them in a day, and it will be scenic cruising. Scenic cruising means you can't get off. Similarly with some of the Alaskan glacial experiences, scenic cruising, you can't get off. If it's in port for a period of time, you'll do excuse me, the estimated arrival and departure time. Shore excursions or shore experiences. So these are effectively day tours operated by the cruise line that take people out to do something or see something. Now, it's really important to remember that with shore excursions and experiences operated by the cruise line, the clients are in the hands of the cruise line. Now, of course, the cruise line don't operate them. They use local agents. If something goes wrong, the cruise will wait for the coach or whatever it may be for that party to come back, because it's their responsibility. Clients, and again, this is a COVID warning, COVID alert, due to current regulations and it's often changing. Sometimes people will be able to get off the ship by themselves. They might have to have a test before, etc. Let's park all that. In general, clients will be able to get off and do what they want, or they can go with a shore excursion. If they do what they want, and I've seen it happen, I've seen it in Bergen coming back on the ship, the announcement went out and out and out, they didn't turn up, ropes got lifted, and then we saw this family right around the corner. They missed the boat, literally. So there we are. And that's because they did their own thing. That's not to put people off. That's basically what they are. Shore excursions are day experiences. Tips, gratuities. More and more cruise lines are including their gratuities. From sales, we used to have so many conversations with clients about tipping, because for us, the UK-based agent or UK people, we like to pay tip people on good service. So we want to see the good service, and then we want to tip them. Because a lot of the sort of the genesis of cruising comes from America, the culture is very different, which is that you tip everybody. You tip somebody at the bar if you buy a drink. You tip waiters, etc. I know of people who've been chased down the street because they forgot to tip a waiter in a restaurant once. Included, added, optional. Sometimes you can put them on. Sometimes you can take them off. Sorry, sometimes you can just take them off if you go to the guest relations desk on the first day. I personally would suggest that we put them on. If there's an option of taking them off with a client and they want to have that discussion, then fine. But I would always recommend that we put them on. These people work really, really hard, and they deserve their money. Dining, open late, early, buffet speciality. Now, I nearly took off the buffet thing here because I know with COVID, some of these buffets are closing or they're changing the way they operate. But the basic thing is open dining means you can eat whenever you like. And the bottom line, I would say to a new to cruise client would be, if you're walking around the ship, there'll be a whole plethora. I just heard this morning, with a sister ship of Silver Moon has 10 dining options. And most of those will not have a price tag. If there's a price tag on it, it will be a speciality restaurant. And the way I would explain that to a client is, on a cruise, you'll never go hungry, ever, promise. If you've never done a cruise, you will never go hungry. It's all full board. At a minimum, it's full board. Some is more inclusive and some are all inclusive. At the higher ratings you go, the more luxurious you get. But with the speciality restaurant, I would say to people, look, think of it as you go to an all-inclusive resort somewhere in Portugal. You go to the nearby village and you go and have a meal out with the family, and you pay for that. Similarly, with speciality restaurants, you tend to have, there is a speciality. It might be a sushi restaurant. It might be a Tuscan grill restaurant. It might be something like that. So there's a speciality. There's a cover charge. The group dining, early or late, some people like that. And again, I might be slightly out of date with this because of COVID. It could change, but I'm talking generically post COVID. Drinks packages I've got here. Drinks packages are becoming again sometimes included, to a level, or you can purchase them. Bottom line with that, I'd say if you're going to have a couple of beers for lunch and a bottle of wine for dinner, it's well worth thinking about the drinks packages. And people can either buy them in advance or they can buy them on the ship, or with some of the cruise lines, they'll actually include them. Facilities. The bigger the ship, the more stuff there is to do. Kids clubs. I was doing some research recently about a P&O. I've taken my kids onto P&O. The kids clubs are amazing. They're open from like 8 in the morning till, sometimes midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, depending on the age. With COVID, of course, there are more restrictions, and you just need to be aware of that. But that's one fantastic way for families, particularly when they're hard pushed or families have to stay at home a lot with their kids. They're a great way of just, parking the kids and off you go. I would say for British children, I probably would, and they're here today, so that's fine. I would say P&O is really important. You're sailing out of mainly Southampton, but the entertainers, the kids, the childminders effectively will all be British. If you're going to go with Royal Caribbean, they'll be American. If you're going to go with MSC, they could be Italian, and there could be a whole mix of different nationalities. And so you might find with those other brands that aren't represented here today in this conference, you might find that they, the kids don't have that many English people to speak to. But as far as P&O is concerned, it's like being a home away from home for Brits. P&O, you have a kettle in your room, so entertainment. The bigger the ship, the more stuff there is to do. Basically, smaller ship, less to do, more intimate. Bigger ship, loads of stuff, loads of choice, loads more people. but you don't have lots of people standing behind you everywhere you walk. You know, if it has a ship that has 3,000 people, you're not going to have 2,999 people standing behind your back. Let's have a look at deck plans. I appreciate time. I'm probably sort of rambling on a bit too much. I've chosen this Silver Muse. It's from a previous presentation, so they may have updated this deck plan. I just wanted to show you how they work. This one's left to right. Sometimes they're top to bottom. Left to right being the lower decks, right being the higher decks, and you've also got here, you've got your color coding and your key. Very important. I'll show you keys in a minute with more emphasis on that. Think of them as layered up on a lasagna. What I always used to do when I was selling cruise, I would always look what's above and what's below the specific suite. In this case, they're all suited. They don't have cabins on Silversea. They're all suites, and they don't have any insides. They only have ocean views or vistas, and predominantly balconies and high grade suites, as you can see. Is always look what's above and below. I mean, sometimes you might find, you know, they might be above a nightclub, or they might be below the resort deck, and that could have an effect or could not have an effect. Look, I very rarely recommend to clients what they should and shouldn't do. All I would really do is paint the picture, let them make the decision themselves. And if nothing else, it might be a subconscious thing in me that I can't get the blame if it goes wrong because they chose it. I just showed them how it would work, and then they made the decision. If I jump forward a little bit here, you can see here on the left-hand side, you've got the 405, 407. You see there's no brown thing. Basically means it's a vista, it's a view of the sea, and they are obviously interconnecting. These are interconnecting here. The thing that I'd like to show here, though, 618 and 620, they are exactly the same suite. 620 is going to be a little bit more expensive. Reason being, 620 is in this middle section. So they are more midship. The more midship, the higher up, generally, the more expensive they become, the higher the price point. Okay, so just bear that in mind. They're exactly the same, they're just in a different position. On position, just bear in mind, think of it as a seesaw. The lower down and more midship, you're going to be the most stable because that's the center of gravity or the fulcrum. The higher up and the more extreme, you're going to move more. If the ship hits any sort of form of weather, which is interesting because a lot of the suites are either forward or aft. Some of the mega suites, you know, the Rockstar suites, you know, look phenomenal on Virgin, for example, but they are often, you know, at the extreme ends. P&O Ventura, look at the color coding. It could be completely bamboozling here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on that right-hand section. Look at here with the balcony cabins, Superior, Deluxe, Standard. Oops, sorry, I've gone the wrong way. Sea View, you've got below there as well. Look, I'm just going to focus on these things. Cabin notes. So always look at those little asterisks, those little stars, those little squares here, because with Ventura, you have, and this is from personal experience, having looked at this and taken my kids on, that little star, it says cabin has one additional bed in the form of a single sofa bed. Below here, we have, it's a pull down bed, and then we have a double sofa bed and pull down beds, plural. So that basically means you're going to have 2 pull down beds and 2 lower beds. So if you are traveling with Granny, Granny may not want to climb up the ladder to go to the bed. It might be that she's lower down, and then you've got, you know, you like that with you and your partner. Another one here with the note, all pull down beds in twin cabins are accessible via a ladder. Key here, when pull down beds are in use, lower beds cannot be converted to a double. Balconies in the forward section of the ship can be overlooked by the bridge. Now, the thing about the double thing is, and the thing about this is, when you are choosing those cabins, for example, on P&O, when I was doing it with our family, I was looking at the particular, you know, the Superior or the Deluxe, and the reason being I chose a Deluxe over a Superior is because it had the sofa bed and we have 2 young kids, and that had a higher price point. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying paint the picture. When I used to work in the previous company, when things like this weren't paid attention to, we would get complaints, because that's another thing about cruise clients. If they're not happy, they're going to let you know. Why? Because they can't change crews midway through. You know, you're on a week-long cruise, you're on a week-long cruise. It's not like a hotel where you could change hotels after the second night. Okay. A couple of other things here. I've picked Scarlet Lady, not because I'm picking on Virgin at all. Pretty much all of the ships have this. You see the top arrow and the bottom arrow. The top arrow here, look at the resort deck. The resort deck protrudes out in order to get maximum space for the resort deck. But that resort deck sticks out, which means the sea terraces, that's what Virgin calls a balcony, the sea terraces below that will be shaded. And there might be a little bit of extra noise. I don't know. Some people will mind that, some people won't. Again, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. Just saying, just paint the picture, let them know, and then they can make a decision. Similarly, lower down on that lower arrow, you've got the lifeboats. And some of those sea terraces will, when you look out, you might look out straight and see the sea, go to the edge, and you've got a great big red, lifeboat there in front of you. I've had that myself, doesn't really bother me. There are some lines, for example, I'm not going to say for example, it doesn't matter. There are some where the lifeboats are right smack in front of the balcony or the window, so they are fully obstructed. So again, it's like get some fresh air, but you can't see anything. These are just conversations to have. And again, just a geeky thing, look at the lifeboats on that. It's just slightly lower down than the Queen Mary 2. So it's a lifestyle choice. I've got a little ping. What's the ping? Someone's pinged me. Am I? Nope, that's fine. It's a different ping, and not a COVID ping. Right, it's a lifestyle choice. I categorize, and I used to categorize when we were training this, categorize into different categories because it is a lifestyle choice. I would start on the left here with contemporary and family friendly. P&O. I have put Royal Caribbean here as well. I know they're not represented in this particular thing, but you need to know that those are the kind of level that you're at. There's a few others I could have put in, but I've not put them in because they're not represented today. I'll talk about them in a bit more detail. Then you've got your premium lines: Virgin, Celebrity, Cunard. You've got luxury. From what I can understand, there's no real luxury here today. I've looked at the list, so I've put in Azamara because they're a sister brand to Celebrity and Royal Caribbean. I'm not really going to talk about them. And then you've got your luxury plus, or 6-star, or 6++ star. It doesn't really matter what you call them, but you need to know there's a distinction between the different roughly the different categories. So if we zoom in a bit more detail, I'm not going to read everything here. Roughly about 70% of people go on these contemporary and family-friendly ships. Now, I know P&O obviously have 2 ships in their fleet that are adults only. So, yeah, it's difficult to group everyone together because it doesn't really work like that in ships. Look, they are good standard overall, very large, between 2,500 and 5,000 guests. Bearing in mind, the bigger the ship, the more space there is. So you're not always going to have 4,999 people standing behind you at dinner. They can have a huge number of facilities, excellent entertainment, usually casual, upbeat. You kind of see where I'm going. Good standard of cuisine, additional dining venues for a supplement, comfortable, reasonable sized staterooms or cabins with good value, and lots of ocean views and balconies, and there are insides as well. If we look at premium, we're approximately 20%, and I have taken this off. I think it's clear that I've taken this off. So that leaves another 10% for everybody else. Upscale, well-appointed, mid-sized. It's good to say mid-sized ships. So that's Virgin, Celebrity, Cunard, okay? Up to about 3,000 guests, ballpark, between 1,500 and 3,000 guests. Range of high-end facilities, varied entertainment, excellent attention to detail. And the attention to detail in this premium level is second to none. You'll get that when you do your training with Celebrity and Virgin and Cunard. You'll see the levels of detail that they go that's specific to their brand. Refined cuisine, specialty restaurants, 5 stars, smart, cool, trendy, that kind of goes smart, cool, trendy, maybe not necessarily with Cunard. That's the different brand, a different way of selling Cunard. I love Cunard, but it's a different feel to Celebrity and Voyages, but they are that premium level. High percentage of balconies. Luxury, I put here Azamara, so I've got an itchy nose. Again, look, I'll just start here from the right. So luxuriously appointed ships, usually small to mid-size, 500 to 1,500 guests. Emphasis on destination, okay, rather than facilities, because they're smaller. There's not that much to do. So they'll take you places, sometimes staying overnight. Usually have more inclusions. So Azamara, for example, are, I think, more inclusive. Pretty much all inclusive. So you'll have a level of alcohol that will be included, so like Budweiser, but not a premium beer, you know, or, and I'm just guessing here, so the Azamar's not here, I can say what I like. Spacious public areas, refined entertainment. So yeah, you're not going to get a West End show. You're not going to get that kind of big shoebiz thing. You're going to have a little bit more refined because they don't have the space. Excellent cuisine, though. Food is really important. So the food here, if you're looking at luxury and premium, food's going to be a top selling point. Very well appointed staterooms. Let's move on to the luxury plus, because we do have scenic and we do have Silversea here. We have luxury yachts with scenic and luxury ships with Silversea. Lavish and small ships, 250 to 750, they really cap out at around about 700, that sort of, or 600 to 700. That's when they start going into that slightly sort of that luxury level, because they can take more people. So these are smaller, destination heavy itineraries. I heard this morning the scenic, obviously, there, and Silversea, they both go to Antarctica. Destination heavy, all inclusive usually, with onboard including all drinks, gratuities, in-suite dining, stock minibar, as well as all meals. So there will often be a specialty restaurant in there with a slight cover charge, a small, more intimate experience. Not all the time. It depends on the ship, and it depends on it depends on the ship and the brand. Sumptuous cuisine served in a variety of settings with the finest silverware, free-flowing beverages. Generally all suite accommodation, sometimes with butler service, with ocean view, no insides. I'm just going to touch on Discovery and Polar. So Discovery is like the Galapagos. Polar is obviously the Arctic and the Antarctic. Very small ships. I guess the thing to hit with these is there are expert guides. Unless you know your stuff, I would probably recommend that you go through an affiliate that you can work with. I know of some that I've worked with, and I've worked for. They're not represented here, so I'm not going to plug them, but you know where you can find them. Try and find an expert, because this is quite specialized. Varying degrees of comfort level, destination heavy. So it's the destination, time of year, what you're going to see, you know, when's the best time to go to see the blue-footed boobies in the Galapagos, or when's the best time to see the mating season and the penguin chicks in Antarctica. Those are the kind of questions that an expert will find. Ask those questions. Why do you want to go? Why do you want to go? What do you want to see? Do you want to see the whales in Antarctica, in which case there's a specific time to go? That kind of thing. River cruising I haven't really touched on, but river cruising, again, well-appointed multiple deck ships. Price usually includes all shore excursions as well as all meals. Low-key entertainment, because they're small. You only carry up to 200 guests. Excellent cuisine, often very local cuisine because they're so small. The chef's team can go out into the local villages and towns and get local food, but also food that's more palatable for somebody who's a bit more traditional. Well-appointed staterooms, most with river views. So I'm just going to touch on why you would sell to promote, how you would promote a cruise. And I'm going to just touch on some cruise must destinations, okay? Rivers of Europe, it's a no-brainer, right? And people will come to you because they want to often do a Rivers of Europe cruise, but also don't forget Russia, don't forget the Far East, don't forget the Douro in Spain, etc. Med, you're probably going to hear a lot about the Med today. A couple of things. Southampton on that top left there. Southampton's the biggest cruise port in Europe. And if people come to you and they say they want Western, Eastern, or Greek islands of Turkey, or they've done the Greek Isles, we want to do Western, that's generically where they'll be thinking of that Western side. Eastern is usually that sort of, you know, the Dalmatian coast and Venice. I'm just going to give you a little tip here. This is the port of Rome is called Civitavecchia. It's not called, I actually once heard it called Civitavecchia, which is just makes it sound a bit rubbish, but it's Civitavecchia. It's a pretty industrial port. However, Istanbul, if people are sailing into Istanbul, try and put them on the port side, because if they're sailing into Istanbul, the likelihood is they're going to have to get up very early if they're sailing in, but they'll see a beautiful of the Blue Mosque. Similarly, if they're sailing out, put them on starboard, because they'll be going under the bridge and out past the Blue Mosque at sunset. Venice, again, if they're going to be in Venice, they need to be out on deck when they sail in or sail out. Piraeus is pretty industrial, so there's not much to say. Barcelona is in the heart of the city. It's literally in the heart of the city. Beware, though, with Barcelona, with transfers. If you allow people to go straight to their flight themselves, it could be half a mile between where the ship docks and the actual entrance to the port where they can get a taxi. And look, from Southampton, you can go to loads of different places. You can go down to Civitavecchia, Florence and Pisa. Obviously, you can't go to Florence and Pisa. If you know the area, you can't do that. You go to the port of Livorno, and then you get the train in, etc. That's a 2-week cruise. You can go up to the Norwegian fields. I've done that. It's absolutely stunning. See here, there, Geiranger Field. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Absolutely beautiful. Again, get a balcony. We were there on, I think it was Cunard. It was Cunard, actually. Up at 6 o'clock in the morning and having our croissants and our cup of tea and our dressing gowns on our balcony. You could almost touch the waterfalls. Absolutely beautiful. This one here down in is very popular as well, into the Baltics. There's a short window in the summer where you can do that. You don't need a visa to go into St. Petersburg, because you're going to be doing the shore excursions with the cruise line. So just bear that in mind. Caribbean, Western, Eastern, Southern. There's loads of information on here. I'm not going to bore you with it. Basically, the orangey ones are the main embarkation points. Fort Lauderdale being the biggest, and Miami. Actually, Miami's the biggest. Fort Lauderdale, Miami. Don't forget, you can go from New York or Manhattan. You can go in the winter. You could do your Christmas shopping in New York and then go down to, of course, pre-post-COVID and all that kind of stuff. Orlando is the entrance port, the airport, obviously, for Port Canaveral, right next to Cape Canaveral, and San Juan, Puerto Rico for Southern. So if someone says to you, we've done a Western, and they're looking at an Eastern or a Southern, or if they've done Southern, they want to do Eastern, that's generically the kind of the split of where it's at. Alaska is an absolutely cruise must destination. You see the one on the left there, note Hubbard Glacier. Hubbard Glacier is this one. Hubbard Glacier is 5 miles wide and up to 40 stories high. Alternatively, you have here Glacier Bay National Park with a different cruise line. Glacier Bay National Park is about 30 odd glaciers, very small, intimate. It's that turquoise still water. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Again, it's only a few cruise lines are allowed in every day. So look, you can go Seward or Skagway. No, doesn't matter. You can go to Seward down to Vancouver or down to Seattle, or vice versa. You can go one way. Entrance point for Seward is Anchorage, Alaska, or you can return in and out of Vancouver, or in this case, Seattle. Likely for us, we're going to go in and out of Vancouver. If you are going to do a cruise to Alaska, I would say it's really important to add on or suggest the Rocky Mountaineer, because about 50% of people do a Rocky Mountaineer tour, do a Rocky Mountaineer, and also do a cruise. So it's highly recommended. Why is wave season important? Effectively, wave season is the first quarter of the year. So January through to March. It's where pretty much every cruise line, and they're actually starting to publish them now, offer special deals. That could be onboard credit, that could be free upgrades, that could be prepaid gratuities. It could be all sorts of deals. There are always deals going around, right? Always. But this wave season is kind of where the entire industry comes together and starts putting out all their deals. So just be aware of that. That's what wave season basically means. Cruise perfect destinations. I've touched on some as well. Obviously, Fjords of Norway, river cruising, Caribbean, the Med. I changed this morning, actually. I should have put that before. It doesn't matter. Alaska, remember, add on to Rocky Mountaineer as approximately 50% do an Alaska cruise. Antarctica and the Arctic, you really cannot see. You want to see polar bears in the Arctic, you've got to do some kind of cruise. Antarctica, penguins, whales, etc. Vietnam, New Zealand, Hawaii, Arabian Gulf, UK winter sun, Canaries and Balearics. Transatlantic regular spring summer services with a Queen Mary 2. That's what she was built for. I just want to just touch on value, because that was one of the things that one of the ways of selling a cruise. 14 nights Caribbean on P&O. I found this last week. It may not be available anymore. It's the 10th and 11th December. Inside from $999 per person, including flights. Here's another thing that I would always do, and you probably do this with hotels anyway. Look at the upgrade. The upgrade here, £50 per person for the entire 2 weeks to have a sea view or a balcony. Works out at about £21.50 a day to have a balcony for 2 weeks. Imagine that, you know, you're sitting on your balcony just watching the world go by in the Caribbean. So yeah, how to promote a cruise. That probably should have come in there before then, right? You might find your client, you're pushing against a rock because they're so resistant. And you might find there's lots of prejudice. And this prejudice might, somewhere in the back of your mind, come from you. And you know the biggest one, I think, particularly for people of sort of my generation, I'm around about 50 odd, is the prejudice. And it's kind of like it's not cool. My answer to that is, if Richard Branson's building cruise ships, it's cool. Cruising is cool. They're just different lifestyle choices. So, popular misconceptions. It will be claustrophobic. Well, the way around that to solve that is choose a smaller ship. Or actually, no, it won't. Have a balcony, have a suite, have your own space where if you do feel it's claustrophobic, for example, on a sea day in the Caribbean and everyone's up on the resort deck and it's a bit crowded, have your own balcony, or choose a smaller ship. Only import for a day. Well, I've shown you it's not true. Some smaller ships have overnights. You'll be herded around like sheep. Again, this is slightly COVID sensitive. You can, as I said before, you can do your own thing. In theory, you might have to have a COVID test before you do your own thing. Again, it will be dependent on the restrictions of each relative country that you go to. This is a big one. It'll be full of old people. Now, if you choose a Saga cruise, the likelihood is, yes, it will be, but I bet they're going to have a good time. Being full of old people, that prejudice, that misconception, it's relative to brand. So certain brands will have a slightly older demographic. Ask your trainers what the average demographic is. You'll probably find for those premium levels and for the family-friendly ones, it's in the 40s to 50s. Silversea might be slightly older, as will potentially a Scenic. Again, you know, outside of school holidays, who's got that time to take off and who's got that disposable income to go? So it's relative to brand. I'll have to dress smart for dinner. Well, on the luxury ones, yes, you probably will. You'll be expected to, at least smart casual. And again, it's relative to brand. Cunard will have formal evenings. Definitely there will be several formal evenings and it's full DJ. I loved it. I took my kids on it. We went on it. And actually, do you know what? We had two little, the kids were quite small. They were fawned over, queuing for dinner, crawling around in their little ball gowns, all fawned over because there was a lot of older people, and they were all missing their grandkids. So there we are. So it's relative to brand. Just going to show you another one here of a good value. This is a slightly different one. So this is Scenic Eclipse. Barcelona, Lisbon to Barcelona, 12 nights for nearly £6,000, and a 7-night Danube for £2,000, just over £2,000 per person. Now, good value is relative to the client, right? I heard once I did a training call with one of my people that I was working with when I was her manager, and I heard her I listened to the call, and she said, "Mr. So-and-so, your X brand cruise around South America for 36 nights is coming in at only £58,500. It's great value, isn't it? What a great deal." And he said, "Yeah, it's a great deal." So yeah, you might be able to buy a house somewhere that might be more than your annual salary. Just be mindful that value is relative. It's all relative, particularly when cruise, because you might have somebody coming in for the 999 deal. The next phone call is going to be that 60 grand call. Just be mindful. You've got to jump between the one to the other and be that concierge. Virgin here, not to leave them out. I picked out here the Insider here, for this is a 5-night around about Christmas time. And it's $842 per person. Of course, they do the cabin price. But look at the upsell. The upsell here to the sea view is $1872, but a sea terrace is cheaper than the upsell to the sea view. That was about 3 days ago. Couple of things of faux pas, things to be aware of. If I talk, obviously, COVID, everyone's going to have to be vaccinated and have proof of and have tests. Yellow fever, don't forget these things like yellow fever. If you're going into South America, you might need to have a yellow fever certificate. Insurance, every single cruise line is going to need you to have insurance, no matter what. If you don't have insurance, you'll have to buy their insurance on the day. Make sure as well, if you can, that you have COVID cover. 21s, you have to have one person of 21 years or older in the cabin or in the stateroom. Sometimes you can get away with that if you speak to the cruise line. We used to do a lot when I was selling, where you'd have a family of older children, teenagers, for example, and the parents. And the parents would have the balcony, and directly across the hall on the inside, you'd have the 16 and the 17-year-old. The only way I could do that, I couldn't do that through the online booking system. The only way I could book that is by phoning up whoever it was, celebrity or P&O, whatever, and get manual permission to make that happen. Baby on board, I've got that there because usually it's 24 weeks of gestation, and that's mainly to do with they don't have pediatric support on board the cruise line. Another thing is, if the ship is sailing for more than 3 days at sea, the likelihood is the average age, or the minimum age, is going to be a year. If it's less than 3 days at sea, so if you're just sort of pootling around the Mediterranean and there's a port every day, it's 6 months for an infant. And then the other thing here, bottom right, visas. Just be wary of visas. I speak from personal bitter experience. I had an American flying into Buenos Aires, cruising back to the UK, and they touched in to Brazil. And we didn't tell them that the American needed a visa, so they were denied boarding. So just be mindful of that if you're going to China, Vietnam, whatever it may be. So look, lastly, but by no means least, have a look at these two here. Touchdown's great. I'm really hoping all of the cruise lines you're going to work with today are going to give you obviously virtual tours, but loads of FABs and educationals. It's the best way of learning. But Touchdown's fantastic for great deals, and also Burlett's Guide. The Burlett's Guide is kind of like the Bible. It's trusted and unbiased. So there we are. And breathe. That's basically it. So I'm done. I'm sure you are too. I hope that was useful, and I'll make this available to you as well if you want to trawl through it. Anyway, Pippa, please say something.
Oh, that was incredible. Thanks so much, Sam. And I've learned loads, and I can see from the comments how insightful and useful all of our agent guests found it. They're desperate for those slides as well, so we'll definitely make sure
I'll give you the slides. I just need to make sure about copyright. There's certain things that I think I've got copyright on pretty much everything I've shown you, so there's a few I might just have to remove just for copyright purposes.
Awesome. Well, we've already kept you a few minutes later than we told you, agents. So please do feel free to leave us now. Hopefully you'll join us again tomorrow morning from 9:30 a.m. for the ship tours. But just one quick question from me, Simon. If a travel agent knows that they've got some customers in their database who are booking cruise but just not booking it with them, so they're booking their 2 weeks in the Caribbean or whatever, but that they know they're booking a cruise direct with a cruise line, say, how best to frame that then to introduce that conversation and sort of demonstrate how they're going to add value?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. I would say just ask them. Is there a reason why you're booking directly through the cruise line? And I would say we have a very good relationship with this particular cruise line. And if you can get hold of the account manager as well, and you don't have to mention that in the conversation with your client, but I would say, we know the account manager. Often we can get slightly better deals for you. And also you'd have me, if anything goes wrong, you would have me to come to and to help you. If the cruise has been booked relatively recently, so as in, in a particular window of pricing, because the pricings change monthly or bi-monthly, whatever, you can often phone the cruise line and ask them to transfer the booking to you. And I can't speak for the cruise lines, but I have had that happen a lot. I'm thinking of a few that I could mention now, but it wouldn't be fair to highlight those ones because it might, obviously negate the others. But yeah, if you phone the cruise line and say, look, can we transfer it to you? They would obviously have to have permission from the client. So the client would have to tell the cruise line we want it transferred to whoever it may be, to you. But I would just ask the question and promote the value that you can offer. So that's usually it's great service. You have me. Often, if you want to take the ownership of the booking and use your own ABTA, if you're supplying your own flights, bearing in mind it might be more convenient for the client, even though it's a higher price point. It might be more convenient to fly, transfer hotel, transfer cruise, transfer flight home. It might be better to do that all the way, particularly now, all the way with the cruise line. But I would say, you have your personal service, particularly if they are loyal to you. Remember, they are loyal to somebody. They may not have just thought about it. They may have just thought, you don't, I do cruises with this one and I do everything else with you. Just say, look, we can do this too, and you've got me to look after you.
Yeah. And how sort of flexible and amenable have you found cruise lines in your experience?
Oh, amazing.
Amazing. Organize special touches if their clients have got a birthday on board and those sorts of things that can really help an agent shine, can't they? Have you found them to be good at sort of organize special things like that?
Again, I'll talk from personal experience. I'm not being promoted by any cruise line at all, so I'm going to talk about personal experiences. I have found with the bigger cruise lines, sometimes it's a little bit more corporate. You have to go through the processes. But if you become friendly with your account manager, the account manager can help bridge that gap. With smaller cruise lines and the more luxurious ones, the two things go hand in hand. So, for example, I'm just going to use this example with Silver Sea. I guess I've said it on my blurb. I'm a Silver Sea advocate because I used to sell a lot of Silver Sea when I was selling Antarctica and stuff, as well as everything else. That's not to say that they're better or worse than anyone else. Scenic, don't get offended. But for example, I used to, with them as an example, I used to say to the clients, what's your preferred tipple, gin and tonic, whiskey sour, and then I would send a message to the guest relations. There's an email, I can't remember what the email was, and I say, look, when the client gets on board, can you make sure you have Bombay Sapphire gin in the client's room? They would prefer that rather than the Prosecco that comes as standard, and it would be there waiting for it. And it's a full bottle, it's not a miniature, it's a full bottle. Things like that. Flowers, again, you can do. Sometimes you can actually pay for them in yourselves, and I would do that as a gift from us. So those kind of details can make a massive difference. Again, Pippa, answering that previous question, if you did manage to persuade a client to go with you, I would probably say, look, get them a birthday cake. If they are having a party, and groups is another great way of selling cruise. Groups are really useful to appeal to. The groups, you can obviously sometimes hire a room on board the ship and arrange all that stuff as well. There might be a fee to it. Whether you choose to pay for it or not is up to you. They're usually not very expensive, but that value, that going the extra mile is really, really important for clients. I'm just going to stop sharing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Simon. I think the fact that so many of our agent guests have stayed with us until nearly 11.
Sorry, I go on. You see, this is the thing. When I was training this at Trailfinders, I used to, this used to take like a week. And you can tell I do rabbit on. But I'm passionate about it. And as I say, the fact that you don't know, you'll know more now after this session. You'll know more over the next couple of sessions. And I would say as well is that when you're getting the training from the cruise lines, do the online training. Sorry, the online training is excellent on all of them. It's fantastic. Obviously, try and get on board. Try and do an overnight. I mean, our ship visits are great, but if you can do an overnight, and I know COVID sensitivities are really prime at the moment, but try and do that. But make your own judgments of what you think of the cruise lines, your own judgments, your head, in relation to, what's P&O like, for what kind of client would fit P&O versus, Virgin or Celebrity. What's the differences between those kind of things? And I would also use my clients. So the ones that have cruised, pick their brains. There's no way I can compete with Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, who I had regulars who had been over 100 nights with Silver Sea. How can I compete with that? I can't. So I would be their concierge, but I would ask their advice, and they would help fill my memory bank. And if I cross-referenced it with other people, it meant that I got a sort of a good picture, because obviously, every opinion is subjective. So I would say that it's just be a sponge of information. And always do not be frightened to say, I'm not sure, let me find out, rather than taking a punt, because invariably it will backfire. And it will just, you'll lose that faith and that trust. I'm sorry, I'm rabbiting on, Pippa.
No, it's been wonderful. Thank you. I love what you said earlier about don't feel like you're being tested.
You're not being tested. You're not being tested. Absolutely right. You're not being tested. It's you're there to find out what's right, and then to pitch the best option, present the best option that you think based on the information you've got. So that's not a test. It's a challenge, but it's not a test. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, we will leave it there. Simon, that was incredible. Thank you so much. We've got amazing comments already from the agents that appreciate your time.